Red River Farm Network Crop Tour presented by Pioneer. I'm Carah Hart for the Red River Farm Network near Brocket, North Dakota, and I've got with me Northland Seed and Services Lee Dahl. Lee, thanks for joining us today. How are the crop conditions around this Brocket area?
Well, thank you, Carah. We're getting into the fall season here where we've had a lot of small grains that have been harvested, and there's kind of a second tier crop that's left out there for harvesting, and it's a little bit later seeded stuff that we're looking at. Maybe not as quite as high a yield as some of the earlier seeded stuff, but harvestability is getting to be a concern on some farms because of the moisture that we've been getting recently. The last few days, or last couple weeks, I guess, we've gotten probably more rain in most areas than we've had all season so far. So harvestability is getting to be a concern, whether you're talking about the canola crop, straight harvesting that, or whether you're looking at small grains finishing up that wheat and some barley harvest. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would have certainly welcomed the rains a little bit earlier on in the growing season, but a lot of people aren't complaining because moisture can also help for next year too.
Absolutely. You know, we're all focused on getting by the rest of this year and seeing what kind of yields we have available through corn and beans, and what that has to offer, but we're welcoming the soil moisture for tillage. You know, we're in a cooler climate up here where we kind of depend on that tillage to help warm the soils up in the spring of the year. So if we can do fall tillage, we're more than happy to have the moisture.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the corn. We are in a corn plot, a Pioneer corn plot, not far from Brocket, and you have a few hybrids that you've picked out. Tell us a little bit about what we're looking at, maybe how the crop's been coming along here.
So, I mean, typically this time of year we're starting to get some denting going on. We've got some new hybrids that are, pushing along the maturity fairly quickly with this heat that we've had, and the heat units that we've had. But there is some natural tip back with some of these new hybrids versus some of the ones that have been around for a couple of years. We've got 7861 and 7844 is a new hybrid for us, and we're looking at multiple different hybrids in the same region because we're trying to get the best crop we can, and one trait one year may be agronomically sound, where the next year we're looking at a characteristic from another hybrid that may be a beneficial that the year prior wasn't beneficial. So that's why we're always looking at more than one hybrid in a year. So when you're looking at most of the stuff that we've got going on here locally, starting to get dent going on, and we're getting to that maturity range where within the next few weeks, we'll start seeing some dry down, and we'll start looking at doing some hand moisture samples to see where we're at. And then it's always fun to do yield checks too. So at the end of the day, I still think we have some pretty good potential. There's just a really wide range of maturity in this crop because of that early season dryness. We have a lot of different stages of crop. So there's typically around 2 to 3 different stages of crop out here.
Is there anything else we should know about the corn crop or this plot at all, any of the hybrids you want to highlight here?
So when you're looking at the early season hybrids, we're looking at some having some natural tip back on like this 7861, but the 7844 is a new one where we're not seeing even that natural tip back, and even through the drought conditions we haven't seen tip back at all. So the performance is doing really good. We're doing a really good job on performance in this area, especially when you look at most of the traits that are being selected for areas anymore. We're trying to find that drought tolerance within a natural selection, and a lot of that is being provided with increased breeding efforts in the northern area.
Lee, I know canola is also a big crop up in this area. How are conditions with the canola?
So again, having that mindset that we're looking at harvestability and that looking at trying to get that crop off as soon as possible. That was another thing we just touched on, that with the canola, we're not so much worried about pod shatter. I mean, the new breeding techniques that we've gotten with enhanced shatter control of the pods, that's not as big of a concern, but naturally, since it has been so dry, pod drop has been a big issue. So we're trying to get that crop off as soon as possible. The yields, even through the drought conditions that we've had, have been phenomenal. So,
how far along would you say canola harvest is up here?
As you head from Brocket area to the south, I would say most of it is, I would say probably 70% complete. And as you head north, it'd be closer to that 50% or less. So a lot later seeded over that way. There was a few more farms that were waiting for the moisture to come in the spring, hoping to have a little bit better stands. So that there's a couple different crops out there for staging.
What should canola growers be thinking about maybe as they wrap up harvest and get ready for next year?
Well, again, cropping rotations are going to be a big concern, especially with the moisture levels. It seems like when we've been driving around having some conversations with some farms, and there's been a lot of talk that typically in the past we haven't been talking a lot about what are we going to go to the next year, but with as much with the lack of rainfall, we've had a lot more guys that have seen some differences in crops based on the moisture levels this year and what was the previous history. So I think we're going into this next year, we're going to kind of throw out the yield results from this year from a lot of hybrids and a lot of varieties out there, because this just isn't natural. So we're kind of going to go back to a lot of the yield results from 21. Obviously we'll take into consideration some of these yields this year because some have been surprising. But we're going to look at planning into next year and seeing what crops will be best.
Well, Lee, thanks for joining us. And before we wrap things up here, you're new to the Pioneer family, and I think we want to introduce someone to the group here. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your business, a little bit about you?
Well, thank you. Northland Seed Service is something that we're excited to provide for the community. Community involvement is always fun when you get to be on different farms and different stages, and everybody does things differently. So we're happy to provide a service to the community. We want to provide seed and crop protection as well. Crop protection is kind of near and dear to me. I worked for Kratchovil and DuPont chemical companies in the past, and bringing business back towards home. I've got three kids and a wife at home, so being a little bit more local will be fun for me. And then we've elected to incorporate a new employee right off the bat so that we can provide some good service for those customers. And his name is Kratchovil, so he'll be joining our team with us next year.
Well, and you've got someone here you want to introduce. Want to step on into the camera here? Come on in. Come join us here. Tell us a little bit about you.
I'm Kratchovil. I'm from Park River area. I go to college in Devil's Lake for Precision Ag. I'm finishing up. I'll be finishing up this spring. I'm on my second year. It's only a 2-year course. I'm really happy that I got the opportunity to come work with Lee, and I think it's going to be a pretty big learning opportunity, but I'm really excited for it. I think it'll do well. I'm coming from the Precision Ag. I want to put precision out here into the farms in our area and come through, help that with our business, and help Lee with the crop protection and selling seed.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. It's so nice to meet you, and I'm sure everyone's going to be looking forward to getting to visit with you once you come out and join here. And is there anything else you want to say?
Just thank you guys for your time and your dedication to all of our communications in the area. So thank you guys.
If folks want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
We'll be available. My cell phone is 701-351-0697. We're, like I say, right now we're at the stages of just kind of meeting and greeting and making sure guys know that we're out here. So.
Well, thank you both for joining us, and thank you for joining us. This is the Red River Farm Network's Crop Tour presented by Pioneer. We're near Brocket, North Dakota. I'm Carah Hart on the Red River Farm Network with Northland Seed and Services Lee Dahl. Thanks for joining us.